All right, guys, Anthony here with Austin Historical Weapons Guild, here with Andreas Knight, again, our new home in Vigilante here in Austin. Tonight is going to be our first night diving into Jude Lew. You saw from the preview picture, we have this lovely, let me nicely zoom in, kind of all washed out, but the blue-yellow Jude Lew book. So we're starting in this, we're just kind of read through a section, go through it, go for 15, 20 minutes till one of us gets bored and everyone stops watching, and go from there. We are going to jump ahead and start from the bottom of page 105. I realize the Zettel gloss starts back at 93, but a lot of that information talks about how to step and how to move with your cuts. It doesn't really give us any plays or information to work off of. The other thing I want to highlight and emphasize is that this is going to be kind of a blind reading refresh for us. So as I read through it, Andreas here, who's probably listened to me talk about this in the past, we're hearing again for the first time, and we're just kind of go through these points and try to make something happen. So this is very much a follow-along study group, going through the book, coming up with concepts and ideas, and obviously we both have pre-existing ideas. We're just kind of keeping ourselves honest, touching back with the sources, and for me, a new source that has new viewpoints and opinions that I probably haven't read, or if I did, it was many years ago when I was getting to things. So page 105, from the verse, it's "Here begins the art of the longsword, first the zornhau," and the gloss of this is "He who throws an overhau is threatened by the zornhau-ort. If he senses it, take off above without peril." So further, zornhau breaks every overhau, but is nothing more than a simple peasant strike. Do it in this way: when he strikes from the right side and above to your head, so strike also from your right side and from above onto his sword wrathfully and without any displacement. Shoot your point straight towards his face or chest. Yeah. And there's more from there, but we'll kind of start with that part. So again, starting distances, we're starting in Vontag, from high, from above. He's going, earlier we talked about stepping lever cuts. So as he cuts in against me, cutting in against him, and I'm cutting down wrathfully onto his sword. And as he continues this cut, I'm not looking to displace or set aside anything like that. As he steps and cuts, I'm looking to cut down here. And as you can see, as I've cut, I've got a nice thrust towards his face or chest, as the verse talks about and implies. So this, again, goes with my strongly held belief and opinion that the zornhau is more than a specific overhau. A lot of people teach you that the zornhau is this kind of arbitrary 45-degree cut, and a lot of that comes from what Meyer shows and what Meyer talks about, but in the early manuscripts, it doesn't feel that way. But continuing on from that section, if he notices your point displaces with his strength, then pull your sword upward from the blade of his sword, away from his sword, and strike him to the other side of the blade of his sword, again to his head. And this is called oben abnehmen, or taking off above. So again, working from the zornhau-ort, so getting that pointed line, that peasant cut from here, he cuts, I do my zornhau, really getting my point on line. As he goes to put aside strongly, whether above or below, they don't really care. I pull away, cutting in towards the sword, towards his head, working from there. Then he cuts, I react, get my point up, cutting through. So notice if he stops being polite and he really tries to protect himself or push against my sword, right? So here, so not from the opening, from the reaction. Don't let me win the drill. So throw your cut. I throw my zornhau, right? So I make my thrust, he pushes it away. He wouldn't fall off to the side like this. He would try to recover, try to step back in, right? So as I throw this cut, I'm throwing this cut to cover his sword and strike him in the face. I'm not throwing kind of this thing where they'll leave myself open to attack. I'm making sure this comes across to my right and really threatening him and picking up his weapon again. So that's definitely important as you're working these abnemens and other things like that. So as he cuts, I have this here, he pushes it offline, I cut through. So even as he tries to cut at me and ignores his own defense for that matter, here. If he tries to cover off his weapon, I'm going to pick that up and strike the head and kind of working from there. So that's working the zornhau-ort, as Jude Lew talks about it. All right, so further we have be stronger, wind against and thrust. If he sees it, take it down. Do this when you strike to him wrathfully. If he resists strongly with his sword and you don't want to take off above, then be strong again and go up with your arms on your right side. Wind the short edge against his sword and thrust toward his face. All right, so things to note. So we're starting the same wrath cut point that we did before, but he resists strongly. I don't want to go above. And arms to your right side, short edge against the sword, thrust to the face. So we'll see how that works and just kind of play it out from there.
I'm wearing glasses.
Right? Safety glasses. So here, I don't want to go up above, so I don't quite have that same safety feeling before. He's been resisting here. So I'm going to wind my arms, short arms there, and get the point forward. But that's some more. Little hand exposure there I didn't like. So I have my wrath. He pushes off to the side more. Right? Push off the side. So maybe it's something like this. Or wind up there. My arm is to my right side, put my short edge on your blade, winding across. So this is really if you've really kind of overbound, displaced, and trapped. So again, he cuts. I zornhau, I get the center. Yeah, now he's really overbound this, and I don't really want to go above anymore because I really can't. So I wind out to there, arms to my right side, short edge on his blade, thrust into his face. So let's reread that, see if that makes any more sense, and kind of dissect that further. All right, so we resist strongly with his sword. You don't want to take off above. Then be strong again. Go up with your arms on your right side. Wind the short edge against the sword and thrust toward his face. Yeah. If he notices the thrust and goes up and displaces, then remain in the winding and set on the point below. All right, so follow-up action. We'll have take these for a little bit more. So he cuts. I show my zorn. I go here. Yeah. I just wind and press through. So that's interesting. It was definitely not what I expected to happen. So we'll talk about that a little bit and kind of play with these some more. So he throws his cut. Again, I zorn. Let me get the zorn for the for the start of the play. All right, so we cut. I zorn, he deflects and gets an overbind. So he's almost in a Krumpau-like position at this point. If that means anything to you. If not, we'll talk about that soon. So I wind out here. As he goes up, right? Yeah, so as he goes up, what I wasn't expecting is he's smartly so he's high and now he's just dropping that point to counter threat, which is a good habit to have. If I just keep my wind out and press down, I deflect across and through and take the lower opening. Nice. What I was picturing, and I want to play with a little bit, is him going up to a crown position more, of not trying to line up that thrust in the ox, but instead trying to play with just going up high and protecting yourself. So again, from the cut, I zorn, he overbinds here. So this, I have a lot less I can do with, like staying in the winding. Like if I step in here, maybe, but even this, I don't get that kind of setup. So it definitely feels like playing through these that the assumption that Jude Lew is setting up is that he's not only going to wind up, but he's going to wind up and then re-threaten. And that's when that winding back down, winding back across really makes sense and really fits in to the play. So from the cut, after my zorn, I wind, I take this down and around and through. That's a very quick, very clean transition. So a quick note, kind of helping highlight and distinguish the first two plays we have. So both are starting from the zorn-ort, or the zornhau-ort, right? Where he throws an overhau at me. And from here, I'm coming in hard, I'm overbinding, and I'm really trying to get this thrust lined up, whether it is face or chest, I don't really care. And if nothing happens here and I get this thrust in, great. I've succeeded in both plays because the sooner I can hit them, the better. However, we're going to assume our opponent is competent and he's done something to counter. So he has two real ways of countering this. So he can either push high, right? That takes us off, and that really nicely leads in the Abnemin style, where this turns off, I cut around, everything else like that. If he pushes off to the right, right? So now, especially, he's really turned this over and has this overbind. So his sword is on top of mine. So I really can't take this Abnemin action without opening up myself to lots of attacks, lots of openings. So that's when I would need to rise off to the right here, push this thrust in, and moving through. He could just as easily, though, push that off to the side, leaving his point centered more, and that kind of becomes my choice of what I want to do and what I feel safest. So as he throws that on here, if he pushes that there, right, I can really start trying to push this one back up, because now that false edge gets across under his blade and protects me. Or if he's not as online as this, and maybe he's up there more, I can still come around with the Abnemin. So being aware that these two plays start identically, and the difference is, Jude kind of talks about it as being if I don't want to go above. In reality, that's me reacting to what my opponent is doing and making sure that my actions leave me safe and covered and not exposed. All right, so moving on, page 108. All right, so remember this: strike and thrust, position, soft or hard, indes before and after. Be aware that you don't move with haste while in the war. And this may be kind of loose, we'll talk about it. So this is a lesson: whenever he binds at your sword with a strike or a thrust, you should not be too hasty in the war, which is in the winding. First, you must pay attention to when his sword flashes at the other one, if he is soft or hard in the bind. And as soon as you sense this, wind indes and work with the war according to soft or hard to the nearest opening. So not a lot of play working from there. Who desires the war above will be put to shame below. Know that the windings and the work with the point towards the four openings are called the war. Do this as follows. When you strike at him with the zornhau, go up with your arms as soon as he displaces, and wind the point of your sword above to the upper opening on his left side. If he displaces the opening upper thrust, remain in your winding position and lower. All right. So starting with the zornhau, as he displaces going up with the arms, is very similar to that last one we just talked about.
So more crown than displacing?
Maybe.
Right.
So he's asking more. I don't know if Andreas' audio shows up. He's asking if it's more crown than a full displacing. Upper opening on his left side. Well, we'll see.
All right.
We'll find it out. So again, he starts the cut. I cut on my zornhau-ort. He pushes aside. I wind here. He pushes this aside. I mean, we kind of see that same one again. Right? And if he just goes up with it.
Is this way too high?
I mean, that's comically high.
Okay.
Right? So don't. So quick notes, some things that are really common problems you see a lot of. So if Andreas cuts at me, or does a zornhau at me, right? So I say my cut, he does a zornhau. If I go like this, nothing he can do above does anything. But this plays exactly what this talks about. If I'm going to war high, all he needs to do is stay where he is and drop his tip. Right? He doesn't even have to lift his hands. He can just rotate from the wrist, drop the tip below, and let that strike in. And I think that's where this is really going to talk about. But the issue we kind of just had there was he just shot straight to the top, right? There was no middle opening. So I'll kind of demonstrate what the middle opening or middle position is. So as I cut, he joins against it. Like here, I'm safe, right? This is coming straight over my head. I don't care about a sword anymore. I don't need to go to this high extension. So from here, as he winds high, now I need to go up. And from here, he can just disengage that and take that down. And I feel like that's what this is kind of talking about. And this is exactly the issue that they're probably highlighting in the book, right? So if Andreas cuts and I do my zornhau-ort, right? I'm here, I have my thrust. Now he's got a good opening. Now I can't just drop, so I can really sink this in. As soon as he goes above, I'm just going to drop this to a low opening there, under the arm, whatever kind of shows up, wherever I can get my sword. It doesn't really matter a whole lot. The point is that I'm able to, without really changing where I am in the wind, in the war, I can just kind of change my targets. And I feel like that's where this is showing up. So then as he cuts, I Zorn, I make a move, I get this high, this drops through, drops out again. So I kind of feel like that's where this one is going. Let me see if the next one is straightforward. If not, I'll probably wrap it up here for the night. Oh, I guess there's more to this one. Displaces the thrust remaining in your winding position and lower the point to the lower opening, also on his left side.
Yep.
If he follows with this displacement after your sword, then search with your point for his lower openings on his right side. If he continues to follow with the displacing, go up with your sword on the left side and hang the point toward the upper opening of the right side. In this way, if you do it correctly, he will be put to shame by the war below and above. So it sounds like I'm trying to make him chase my point in circles the entire way.
Yeah.
So playing with that.
So basically, when you come in, I should displace it again. You will come
Yeah.
under, I displace it again.
Yep. So constantly making you chase and hunt. So he cuts. I get my thrust. 1, 2, 3, 4, and just trying to make those engagements, make those movements, getting him to chase around while I'm in control the entire time. So again, this is kind of our dive, our study group session into the Jude Lew book. If there are any questions, comments, definitely feel free to comment on these. If you hate this format, hate the style, let me know as well, because I can change up and do something else. But if you tell me you don't like it, you have to give me an alternative. That's the rule. Otherwise, guys, if there's any questions, again, reach out below. Otherwise, Wednesday we'll have another Fabrics video, and we're back on Friday with some more cloakwork. Hope everyone stays safe, and I'll see you guys later. Thanks.